Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I can, for a battery event, I can really feel the energy. Huh? No, really though, this is amazing. It's really nice to see so many folks interested in energy resilience and energy storage on such a packed week in particular. So really, thank you for being here. We got a really exciting series of discussions and of events over the and conversations over the coming 2 hours. So hopefully you're nice and caffeinated. If you do need to step out, by all means, go ahead and do that. But we've got a really exciting session up ahead. My name is Neil Padicone. I'm Director of Green Economic Transformation at the New York Climate Exchange. And this is the Urban Battery Forum. Like I mentioned, we've got an exciting program this afternoon. I'm going to kick us off with a quick overview of the exchange and then pass it over to my colleague Inga Peterson from the Global Battery Alliance, who's our co-host and partner on today's event. After that, I'm going to share a little bit of a very newly released report that we at the Project Closed Circuit, which is an initiative of the Climate Exchange, just released, an introduction to battery circularity. This is a really, really robust report. So I'm going to link that to the. I'm going to put a link to the report in the presentation. So please do check out the full thing. After that, we're going to have a Global Cities Summit in which we'll discuss a couple of instances of how cities around the country and around the world are managing fleet electrification, battery deployment, battery maintenance, and circularity and next steps. Of course, because of the elephant in the country, visa issues, challenges related to that. A lot of folks are not as many people are here in the U.S. as for the week as in previous years, and so a couple of folks are kindly joining us remotely or have sent in videos for some of the content they want to share. But still, I think even that commitment kind of demonstrates how important this conversation is at the local level, but really at the global level. After that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Wyatt, who will walk us through a battery innovation showcase of a handful of really exciting companies in this space that are doing really interesting things in battery management, deployment, and circularity. And then at 4:30, can grab the rest of the whatever coffee is remaining, see some of the posters that a few students and researchers from across our academic network are going to be hosting to share with you about what they're up to, and just continue the conversation, meet one another, and build the grid. Sorry, I'm going to stop. But build the network that really moves this conversation and this work forward. And then if you are so inclined, at about 5:30, many of us are going to be heading over to the Volta our colleagues at the Volta Foundations. They are hosting a battery social about 2 blocks from here. That does have a cover, but it'll be a wild ride. So join us there. So just to kick it off, how many of you are familiar with the New York Climate Exchange? That's a good number. Excellent. Well, I'll give you our little spiel. We are a relatively new climate organization. The city of New York put out a tender to develop a Center for Climate Solutions on Governor's Island, and Stony Brook University on Long Island was selected as the winning bid. And now we are a consortium of about 11 universities, 3 corporations, and about 33 different community partners, extending from labor unions to workforce development organizations, chambers of commerce, environmental justice organizations, arts and cultural institutions. And the idea is really to source solutions to climate change from wherever they may exist throughout and across that network and beyond. Pilot them here in New York City as kind of a living laboratory, and then based on that success, share them further afield. In the coming years, 2029 probably at the earliest, we will be we will have a physical home on Governor's Island at this campus. For those of you who haven't been, Governor's Island is right now a parkland that lies between Manhattan and Brooklyn, right in New York Harbor, and it is this beautiful space where you both you can experience where the water meets the urban coastline and see firsthand some of the challenges of climate change in an urban space, but also by virtue of the panorama and just the vast diversity of experiences that you see from there, the potential solutions. And so the idea behind the climate exchange is to grapple with those realities, but also be inspired to create and develop those solutions across sectors. It'll be a convening hall for convenings like this and beyond. It'll be a demonstration lab for technologies and solutions across this world. And the building itself will embody a lot of the solutions that we are talking about. A resilient waterfront to demonstrate how we can absorb energy into the waterfront, mass timber constructions, a solar canopy up top, and a lot of other things so that we can de-risk many of the solutions and innovations that the rest of the real estate world and the built environment can adopt. And like I mentioned, a very powerful, capable network of partners, anchored by Stony Brook, but extending geographically throughout the 5 boroughs, as far north as Rochester Institute of Technology, as far west as University of Washington, as far east as Oxford, and as far south as Duke and Georgia Tech. And really, a tremendous array of partners that kind of fuels everything that we do. This convening today is in many ways a culmination of a project called Project Closed Circuit that we at the Exchange have been leading. My former colleague Grayson Shore, Wyatt Williams, and I been leading called Project Closed Circuit, which an initiative that really focuses on making cities hubs of battery circularity. And what that means will be a little clearer as we go forward. But the work that's meant is creating awareness of and building the constituency to advance battery awareness and deployment and circularity. There are a lot of different constituencies, from drivers and fleet managers to solar installers to people who just, even event planners, right? That may not realize that batteries and battery circularity are part and parcel of what they do. And so expanding this this constituency, and that's involved events like this that have extended across the nation and through the internet across the world to really get this word out, and through publications and reports, including the one that we're going to be releasing today. The second piece is around solutions exchange, making sure that people understand things that have been effective, innovations that have been effective across geographies, so that what was effective or a learning in one locale can inform what's done elsewhere and build upon that in a kind of global network. And finally, applied urban solutions, working with partners across city, civil society, private sector, academia, to turn New York City itself as that living lab, that replicable model for battery innovation. And so this is in many ways, today's event is in many ways a culmination of that. But before we jump into what's next from us, I want to invite our colleague, Inga Peterson, to share a little bit about the Global Battery Alliance. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here and to see all of you. And I was just saying to our friends from New York Climate Exchange that there's been a real rejuvenation in this room, because we hosted our leadership meeting this morning, the Global Battery Alliance, where we had quite a couple of exciting announcements. But it's so great to see the sort of almost next generation of battery enthusiasts now in this room. And I think it's such a nice compliment. I have been given the formidable task of summarizing a little bit what we discuss today in 3 hours into 3 minutes. And I have not prepared any slides, so I'm just shortcutting this or short-circuiting this to our website so you know where to direct your interests in the absence of a slide deck. So I'm the executive director of the Global Battery Alliance. I'm going to do your trick. Who's heard of us before? Who's familiar with the Global Battery Alliance? Okay, that's actually a fair number of people. So we were founded back in 2017 when batteries did not draw such a crowd that we see today in this room, but it was very much a fringe industry and not very accessible or definitely not on everybody's agenda to talk about at an event such as this. Our members came together in a double realization to say we actually need batteries. Batteries are the key enabler of the green transition of our Paris Agreement targets to decarbonize transport, to decarbonize power. But with the growth that we need, there's going to be inevitable impacts. And at the time, the impacts that we focused on specifically was the battery carbon footprint, so greenhouse gas emissions across the supply chain, but also issues of child labor, typically associated with cobalt value chain, especially in the DRC. At the time, there was a lot of attention by organizations such as Amnesty International on this issue. So we brought together mining companies, cell manufacturers, automotive OEMs, together with UNICEF, international NGOs, to say we need this industry to grow, but it has to be with environmental, social, and governance guardrails placed on it so that we don't create undue negative impacts on the back of this transition and on the back of this growth. So these organizations came together to say we need multi-stakeholder collaboration to address this, and we need collective action that spans the supply chain. It's not a mining sector problem. It's not an automotive problem. How do we catalyze that collective action across the value chain? And our solution to do that is the battery passport. So those of you who are not familiar with it, the concept is of a digital product passport. Just like you have your passport when you arrive at customs, you can see, or the customs officer can see where you've been, and you have your visas that you meet certain requirements. So the battery passport has information on the material flows. Where did the nickel come from, the cobalt, the lithium? But also, how did the actors along the supply chain respect human rights, conduct risk management, due diligence, and what's the battery carbon footprint? What's the recycled content so that the battery can eventually be recycled? So we launched this concept. It was picked up by the EU battery regulation to become a mandatory requirement in the EU as of 2027. But we're taking it one step further to say, transparency is one thing. What we actually want to create is comparability. We want to bring transparency to these value chains, but we also want to inform the purchasers, the consumers, and the investors in battery value chains to be able to compare products based on these sustainability metrics and not just on cost. So we were pretty excited today, after many years of work, to launch the battery benchmarks, which is actually the first comprehensive set of harmonized metrics to assess a battery sustainability performance. And you see them here on our publications tab. So in lieu of a presentation, here you go, it is there available. And not only that, we also launched a partnership with International Trade Center, which is a collaboration of the UN and the World Trade Organization, to develop on our behalf the minimum data sharing infrastructure as well, so that companies, especially in the global south or small and medium-sized companies, have a lower entry barrier to participate in something like that, to share their data in a secure environment, and to obviously ensure that this data is trusted. So this comes along with data assurance guidelines and others. So for us, this gives you at least a taster. I could obviously stand here for another 3 hours, but I'm not going to hijack your program. Don't worry, I don't need the time warning that I've been threatened with. For us, we're really trying to achieve this global systemic change of how we approach the scaling of the value chain, to bring transparency, bring comparability, and to improve practices along the value chain, from mining companies through manufacturing and recycling. But all of this doesn't serve a purpose if there's no uptake of batteries and integration of batteries into our everyday life. So I'm really excited that we can sort of span this entire spectrum from the global systems change and engaging our partners along the value chain. You find them listed as supporters on our website, to this local context. How do we actually create consumer confidence in battery applications? How do we tell the story about batteries and the many applications? Because it's a really underutilized product, actually. If you buy an EV today, you think it can get you from A to B and it's great, you can charge it. But once we talk about home integration, grid integration, and really leveraging this decentralized energy storage, I think the uptake is a no-brainer. So, and it's organizations such as, the New York Climate Exchange that can tell that side of the story and really work on that local acceptance and uptake. So for me, it's a really symbiotic event today that we managed to talk big picture today. And we had a lot of conversation around demand, not just demand for batteries, but demand for sustainably produced batteries and GBA certified batteries in the future, and to now take it into the context of New York City. So is that 5 minutes? Okay. All right, then I'll end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Inga. And that's actually a really great transition because, like I mentioned, we're very excited to release our own report, An Introduction to Battery Circularity. The QR code to access the full report is listed there, and it's going to be recurring on the forthcoming pages. So do take a scan of that and download it to wherever you need to. In the interest of time, I'm going to share this today, but I do want to acknowledge that this is mostly, frankly, the brainwork of my colleagues, Grace and Shore, our inaugural circular economy fellow at the Exchange, who has this tremendous background in critical mineral supply chains, battery management, and so much more. He's now started his own company called Buckstop, which is an AI-powered company that focuses on urban mining. So please talk to him afterwards about that and anything else that I don't answer in this presentation. And of course, our other co-author, Wyatt Williams, who's economic transformation associate at the Exchange, brings a really robust background in waste management as well as fleet electrification. And you can see a lot of that intersection in the work here. And so, like I said, they are a lot smarter than I am. So please, when I make mistakes, blame them. No, those will be my mistakes. But please do ask them for any follow-ups in the discussion later on. So with that, this is just a quick overview of the report itself, the battery boom, and how much growth in terms of the demand and growth that Inga was talking about, the critical mineral supply chain issues that come with that, global dependence on China, some issues related to battery chemistry and their degradation, but then really our proposed solution, a circular economy one. And finally, we conclude with how urban and regional economies can really work towards that. So as we all know, batteries are essential for consumer electronics, mobile electricity storage, vehicle electrification, effective grid management, and really the effective integration of renewable energy into the power supply. And that is why the global battery industry is experiencing tremendous growth, driven mostly by the rapid adoption of EVs. To put that in perspective, in 2013, there were about 100,000 electric vehicles on the road worldwide. Just 10 years later, in 2023, that number reached 40 million. And so global demand for lithium-ion batteries is projected to surpass 2019's total annual demand on a weekly basis by 2035. So this number is probably not even, this chart is probably not even doing the full thing justice. But of course, batteries are dependent on critical and rare earth materials such as cobalt, lithium, and nickel to support their internal chemical reactions. And sourcing these materials will require tremendous amounts of mining, including the development of more than 283 more mines than exist today. That's something that's really concerning, given, on one hand, the long lead times for bringing a mine online. Here in the US, it takes about 20 to 29 years to build a mine. While the global average is about 15 to 16 years. And, as Inga described, a really big concern is that this mining also comes with tremendous human rights and environmental concerns. Moreover, the mining and processing of these materials, as well as the manufacturing of both the components and the complete systems for batteries, are all heavily dependent on one country. China is the top producer for about 29 of the 50 critical minerals identified by the US. The US is the second largest producer of rare earth materials globally, but even those US produced rare earths have mostly been sent to China for processing. China also represents about 90% of global installed cathode and about 97% of anode active material manufacturing capabilities in batteries. So this puts all other countries, particularly those with tenuous geopolitical relations with China, including the US, some countries in Europe and further afield, at a distinct disadvantage in the battery supply chain. Just one more piece about the supply there. The report goes into some detailed analysis of different types of battery chemistries. But the point I really want to raise for today is that all batteries degrade, right, after prolonged use, just like your cell phone, including for large electric vehicle batteries, about 7 to 14 years, depending on the chemistry, the make, the usage. And at that point, they're no longer able to power the vehicles at the same strength, even though they retain about 80% of their initial storage capacity. Lithium-ion batteries, of course, are not homogeneous. There are different battery chemistries, NMC, LFP, being the two most common among them, and they provide different energy densities, different operating voltages, different component sourcing challenges. But importantly, LFP are becoming more prevalent because they tend to be more durable. They tend to retain about 80% of their capacity after 3,000 charges. But this degradation and the minerals within them, the materials within them, opens up the possibility to extract additional value even after its first use. So to put this all together, some of the challenges related to the battery economy, there is this tremendously high demand for final battery product assets. And this is important, but another kind of piece of that puzzle is that another challenge here is that fleets actually aren't electrifying as fast as they could or probably should be, and batteries have a role to play in that. And the second is there's this huge dependence on critical minerals that are often difficult to source, which of course comes with the human rights and environmental concerns related to mining. The third is global reliance on limited geographies for materials processing and both component and asset manufacturing. And then there's kind of this final question. Once these batteries degrade, what are we going to do with them? So, particularly given the concerns about sourcing materials and components, we in this report argue that a circular economy approach is really a vital way to utilize the full value and economic potential of battery assets. It's a way to reduce dependence on unreliable sources of material and lower carbon emissions. But what does that mean? The way we define that is first extending the first use as a vehicle battery. The second is reuse and repurposing, giving that vehicle battery a second life. And finally, recycling and materials recovery. So for extending first use, what does that mean? It means maximizing a vehicle battery's life cycle using intelligent battery data management. It involves using data to optimize battery performance so it can be used longer to power vehicles. And we have colleagues in Seattle that are working with the local transit authority to study their routes, whether uphill, downhill routes, they can be kind of optimized for better usage of those batteries. But then even then, once they're used for that first use, can they have a secondhand user or a pre-owned version of that vehicle retain that first use before being discarded? The second piece is around reuse and repurposing. Now, once a battery's charging capacity or state of health degrades to about 70 or 80%, and it can't be used for vehicles in the same way, it could be given a second life by being repurposed for building energy or electrical grid or other energy storage. This approach really transforms a degraded EV that might have been considered discardable waste and turns it into a valuable asset. And also, really importantly, for the economics of fleet electrification, it allows EV owners to earn money, right, from their used batteries. And a tip of the hat to one of our later presenters at Moment Energy for this really compelling visual about how, prior to moving from the first use of that battery into recycling, there is this value that really ought to be captured. And then, of course, in the third piece, at the end of its usable life, the battery can be recycled. There are a few predominant technical processes for doing this, but whatever they are, they extract and purify raw materials and send them back to manufacturers for the creation of new batteries. And so this whole closed loop system really dramatically reduces the need to mine new materials, and it creates a sustainable cycle that minimizes waste and environmental impact. So coming back to that elephant, we all know that here in the U.S., the Inflation Reduction Act a few years ago, supported both the development of a domestic supply chain for batteries and components, as well as a domestic demand for battery products, which also had really strong implications for the global market. But that said, as of 2025, the federal government has largely retreated from its previous support for renewable energy, for electrification, for distributed energy resources, and to a lesser degree, battery storage. And this visual is just was a modeling of the potential job loss that would come with some of that retreat. But that said, I think one of the themes of this whole week is that despite that context in which we find ourselves, the reason that we are all convening in spaces like this is because there's still possibility, because there needs to be possibility. And in this report, we describe how the retreat of the US federal government actually provides cities, states, and metropolitan regions with a unique opportunity to take advantage of the innovation, of the decarbonization, and the market development possibilities that circular economies for batteries offer. And that has three specific implications, similarly on the first use. The scale of electrification in urban areas means that electrified municipal and private fleets and vehicles can utilize innovations in data management to optimize those first uses, and also, because of that density, develop markets for pre-owned or used electric vehicles. All of that is to extend that first life of a battery asset in its primary use. The second piece is, as dense markets that are both the home to the majority of electric vehicles and central players in energy storage deployments, we're going to hear a little bit more about how New York is approaching that later, metropolitan areas are uniquely positioned to connect the forthcoming supply of used electric vehicle batteries with the demand from energy storage systems at a local level, effectively creating a local closed-loop market. And these graphs here kind of demonstrate what that could mean. On the top, you have the cumulative second life feedstock that's going to be coming off market in the coming years. And on the bottom, the projected energy storage demand. And so they're not necessarily one-to-one, but there is, a potential market link to be made there. And then finally, after the full electricity storage value of battery assets has been extracted, municipalities can work in cooperation with regional entities to develop recycling facilities within the region. And that regional piece is really important because very often the transportation and the transportation costs of moving batteries can actually really affect the economics and the economic viability of that second life use. And so keeping those things tight and lowering those costs is an important part of that regional piece. And, to facilitate the development of these regional circular markets, urban areas can really, on one hand, adopt and localize successes from federal entities. And that means three things: prioritizing research and development, and enacting local policies, including extended producer responsibilities that ensure that markets are incentivized to manage end-of-life materials properly and effectively, as well as a responsible battery buyers alliance of private and local government battery users that can informally align on purchasing guidelines, on analytics sharing, transportation requirements, and circular design standards. And then, even though it's a kind of at a lower scale, it can be a more targeted one, leveraging industrial policy tools. Now, I'm gonna conclude this piece but it's another piece of our conclusion in the report is a perfect segue for our next conversation. And that is that urban areas can learn tactical lessons from one another in the development of these local battery economies. In our report, we elucidate a handful of them, but we're really excited to have a few presenters share about what is happening in their respective parts of the world. And so before we turn that over to them, I just want to give one more tip of the hat to my colleagues Grayson and Wyatt for just the amazing work that went into this report. So please give that a scan, read it in depth, and get in touch. And with that, let's move on to our Global Cities Summit.
And the reason why I'm presenting Stockholm today, I give you a short overview on who I represent. The reason why Stockholm is there is I've been living there for over 30 years now and started, so to say, my career in batteries, also smart grids in Stockholm. So a city that I experiences a lot also when it comes to commuting. Recharge is the European Battery Association representing the advanced and rechargeable lithium-ion battery industry. It's quite unique that we are a transversal organization covering, in fact, an entire ecosystem or value chain, if you would like to say so. So while the cell manufacturers really are the core of our association, we also look both up and downstream in the value chain because many questions when it comes to regulation affects members also in other industries, not only the cell producers. But leaving us having a look at the quite nice city of Stockholm, that has for a long time at least boosted about climate leadership. It was one of the first 10 cities to be adhered to the Net Zero Cities pilot program and has managed to reduce its emissions by over 20% since 1990 and has now the net zero target coming up quite soon. In fact, 2030, it always sounded so far in the future, but now it's actually only 5 years ahead of us. But I think they are quite well underway. There are remaining challenges that I might address a little bit later. If not, you can remind me. The focus areas which they have worked on can be summarized in sustainable mobility. There's a lot of focus on circular economy. So thanks for the good introduction also on the recycling part. But also citizen engagement. So they're making a lot of efforts in actually engaging, informing, educating the citizens about the benefits of going electric or into shared mobility, using bikes, whatever you have for transporting. Some of the highlights in this mobility transformation in Stockholm is, in fact, the strong focus on the public fleet that we have in Stockholm. So there's a lot of focus on electrifying the bus fleet for public transport, but also when it comes to electric taxis or delivery vehicles, the so-called last mile vehicles. So for taxis, for example, if you go to the airport, it's they have special zones. So there is very similar to other European cities, really a focus on to have zero emission vehicles that are allowed only to pick up passengers there. They're also looking at new technologies like battery swapping. This is not a vast technology, I would say, nowhere in Europe. But it is coming and is promoted also in China. So maybe we are seeing a little bit more of it in Europe in the near future as well. So there are pilots that is looking at swapping system for modular lithium-ion battery systems for light electric vehicles. That are food delivery trucks. You can see a small picture of one of those food trucks up there that is done also in cooperation with some of those food delivery companies as well. Urban logistics innovation, this last mile delivery that I mentioned, they're already looking at how to improve it. Not only that they're looking at smaller vehicles, but also on smart routing. So they're using a lot of AI really to design the best delivery ways. They're also trying to look at what time you can do those deliveries. With the aim of reducing congestion and emissions in the city center. There have been some very interesting pilots as well, where they had cameras in trucks and actually filming how they were driving on congestions and so on, that are the basis also for where to put charging infrastructure, for example. Then this is one of the goals that is mentioned in the city action plan, is also a big focus on the cycling infrastructure. And there we have, of course, e-bikes incentives to help shift commuters to low emission modes as well. One particular thing for Stockholm that I wanted to highlight is really this very cool hydrofoil ferry. This was unfortunately only a pilot that is now finished, but it has been a quite spectacular sight. It has been in regular traffic between islands. As you know, Stockholm is located on a lot of islands, so there's a lot of water to cover. So they did this in cooperation with a boat manufacturer called Candela, and had this first hydrofoil ferry that carried about 25 passengers in regular traffic over the summer. And because it is a hydrofoil boat, it is quite energy efficient as well. And it's actually quite smooth to travel once you get your speed and travel, so to say, above the waves. So if you ever have the opportunity to try such an electric boat, take it. It's really an experience. And I really hope it has been very well adopted by the passengers as well, by the citizens. So I'm really hoping that this is something we will see much more often in the future. Then how do we achieve then the zero emission in the inner city traffic? We have right now 20% of our cars within Stockholm. It's about, in 2023, I think it was about 125,000 cars that are chargeable. We still have a lot of plug-in hybrids, not so much full electric vehicles. But there has been a shift, and that is not only for Stockholm. I think this is for Sweden, away from incentives to consumers, so EV incentives. They were stopped. Instead, there is now an electrification strategy, a national one, that is focusing much more on building out charging infrastructure. So they're developing an infrastructure that will allow the adoption of EVs better for consumers. This is the thinking behind it, and this is the same that is aligned from Stockholm. And I think inside Stockholm, they have already a quite good coverage of charging public chargers. They have the aim to have 100% of the city-owned parking spaces equipped with electrical chargers by 2028. In the suburbs, they have a little bit lower targets or ambitions. So 2025 by 25% by next year, but reaching 100% in 2013. And even here, they're using the system of public-private partnerships a lot. So they're partnering up with grid operators, property owners, fleet managers, and charging providers to really manage to achieve those goals. We already talked about on the freight and delivery transformation. And I showed you previously a picture, and that's maybe one of the challenges to finalize my presentation as well, that they had very ambitious plans and said, we're going to introduce zero emission zones. It's called in the old part of Stockholm, very central, by 2025. But there was, especially by the people living in this area, delivering things into this area, a lot of reluctance because the transformation had not gone so far as was previously expected. So they said, we can simply not deliver because we don't have the fleet available that is electric. So if you have this zero emission zone inside Stockholm, there will be no cars delivering your food or your post or getting the garbage. So this had to be scaled back and postponed for a couple of years. So this is, I think, also reflecting the slower EV uptake that we see all throughout Europe. There's a new reality, and plans sometimes have to be adapted. But regardless, I think there's a lot of good initiatives, a lot of those pilots that are going on, as you can see here. New strategies on how to reduce traffic, shifted to off-peak times, maybe drive during the night, because if you have electric vehicles, you will have less noise and therefore can distribute maybe the traffic more evenly throughout the city. No, this I think will conclude my presentation. I think there was also a question on citizens' engagement or safety, but maybe we can save this for the discussion. Thank you.
A municipality in your previous work, and of course, Stockholm exists in the context of a very supportive national government, and of course, a kind of pan-governmental framework of the European Union. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how Stockholm has worked across those jurisdictions.
Cooperation with the European Union or at national level, I think.
Correct.
From that perspective, I think every city has its own strategy when it comes to reaching climate goals. So that is, of course, aligned with the larger national plans as well, which in turn is then embedded in the larger climate goals that has been set out by the European Commission or European Union. But those are giving I would say, the direction of travel. But how to actually achieve those into details is then done by the city or communities within each member state in Europe. But I think that you want to go climate neutral by 2050 is really the overarching, I would say, direction of travel. But how to reach it is not prescribed by the European Commission in detail. So it's, I think, up to every city also to decide what are the preconditions they have, what will work, what will not work. Stockholm has, as a personal experience, maybe also a very good. There are still very many people travel in private cars, but it has, in general, a very well built out public fleet. And this is, of course, something that you can use also from the decision makers. In public tenders, you can promote electric vehicles or low emission vehicles when you say put out public tenders for the bus traffic, for example.
In the interest of mixed media, I'd like to welcome Sergio Rodriguez from Con Ed to talk a little bit about the work that you're up to here in New York.
So first, I really like to thank Neil, Climate Exchange, for having me and for having this conversation. It's essential to bring us all together, to benchmark, to level set each other, and to discuss the work that's yet to be done. My name is Sergio Rodriguez. I am the director for energy storage at Con Edison. We support the state and the company's clean energy commitment. And we do utility storage as well as market storage and competitive procurements. So Con Edison, for those of you who are not from around here, is the New York City local power company. So happy to host you all if you've traveled from afar. We power everything. We power the largest public school system in the world. We power in the country, excuse me. We power the transportation. We power the universities, the New York Stock Exchange. We power 9 million customers in New York City. We know that it takes reliable energy. It takes resilient energy to keep the economy going. And to power our customers' demand. We're fully committed to meeting New York State's ambitious climate goals. We believe that it's really part of our mandate to make sure that as the state and as our customers' energy demand increases, that we're there to be able to meet them where they are. So far, over the last 5 years, we have put more than nearly 50,000 heat pumps as customers have requested newer technology, more renewable technology. In that same time span, we've interconnected nearly 15,000 electric plugs for EVs. We believe that it's catching on. More than 2/3 of new buildings are all electric buildings. So the things that are coming onto the grid, they're coming on as fully electric. Just like we have a lot of progress from our customer side, we also see it on the energy storage side. So the state has a 6,000 megawatt goal by 2030, and we're proud to be contributing to that goal. Starting in 2028 here in New York City, we put online the largest battery in the city. That was a 2 megawatt system capable of powering in Brooklyn, Queens for about 6 hours. At the time, largest utility scale system, part of a portfolio that helped manage over $1 billion worth of infrastructure to manage energy in both Brooklyn and Queens. In 2023, we did it again. We put online the largest battery yet again in New York City, a 7.5 megawatt system that could power about 30 to 31 megawatt hours in Staten Island. We're proud to say that from the end of 2023 to the end of 2024, we more than double our customers' capacity for energy storage. So nearly 100 megawatts of energy storage capacity was added onto the system. In 2025, we're on track to potentially add another 50 megawatts onto the distribution grid. So big leaps as far as where we started. We're also very proud to be supporting energy storage by working with developers both on the transmission system and on the distribution system to onboard more than 200 megawatts through our utility dispatch rights program. So that's developers working directly with the utility to onboard battery capacity and have it used as the grid needs demand. We know that we have to be ready. All of this is happening very, very fast. We're going to have significant portions of the energy economy transferring over, transitioning onto the grid. We have to be ready for that. We are going to have yet another critical service, heating, as buildings electrify, adding to the winter demand. So not only will transportation be dependent on it, but building heating will be dependent on it. Entire sectors of our economy are transitioning over. So we know we need to be ready for that kind of reliability. Today, we're 9 times as reliable as the next utility, and New York City meets that. Heating meets that. EVs and transportation need that. And so what we're doing is preparing for the winter that's coming. We're preparing for the EVs that are coming. Our regulator, the New York State Public Service Commission, recently approved infrastructure improvements to get ready a lot of our transportation infrastructure ready. That way, when buses as a wholesale begin to electrify, the infrastructure will be there and ready to be able to host it. We know that we have to host a lot more renewables. So whereas energy used to be very, very, let's call it steady before. Now it's going to be far more dynamic. It's going to require far more controls. So we're getting ready for this future by using a multi-pronged approach. We are providing more energy efficiency programs for our base load to go as low as possible. We are supporting EVs through managed charging programs. We're supporting customers with time of day and time of use rates. We are developing a DERMS system, which is going to help us track and control a lot of this diversity in a way that we can orchestrate the grid. And lastly, but not the least, we're supporting with targeted demand management. So where the grid needs it, we are accelerating a lot of these programs targeted to that area to help us manage as we build the infrastructure. We know these systems are not just a grid asset. We know that they are also part of the community. So we actively work with our community to improve the areas where all of our energy storage is going. And we're working with city and state partners to make sure that it's safe, reliable, and that those benefits stay local. And all I have for now. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sergio. Our next presenter, Pat, can you hear us? Welcome, Pat from Seattle City Light. It's going to talk to us about what's happening on the West Coast.
And while the slides are coming up, hey everyone, my name is Pat Hermann. I am the manager of our load flexibility and our residential energy efficiency teams at Seattle City Light. For folks who aren't familiar or maybe new to the US, Seattle is a city based in the state of Washington, out on the West Coast, north of the state of California. So introduce myself, and even though this deck is titled Load Flexibility, batteries are critical to this. We are at Seattle City Light, unlike our colleagues in the East Coast and Con Ed, we are very new to this space, very new to load flexibility, very new to battery storage. So our story is going to have similar themes, but be drastically different in other areas as well. We have different challenges. We have a different climate here in Seattle than what I experienced growing up in the Bronx. So I would say also we have plenty of the original battery hydroelectric power. So to help us tell the story a little bit more, here is just high level of how we exist today as a public power utility. Our core mission is to deliver clean and affordable and reliable power to our customers. And that's going to be an ongoing theme as part of today's presentation. Not only do we serve Seattle, but we serve surrounding cities as well, at least 7 franchise cities. We also have a fantastic track record of leadership, primarily historically in that energy efficiency space, where we were the first utility to achieve 100% net carbon neutrality in 2005. So similar to these themes that, again, we heard from our colleagues a few minutes ago. But the world is changing, and that's, again, an ongoing theme for us. We can no longer truly just rely on energy efficiency to power the grid moving forward. So high level, as I mentioned before, we have often what we joke about as the original battery hydroelectric power. For those familiar with the Washington State area, there's a great source of hydroelectric power from different sources, primarily coming from Eastern Washington. So we have hydroelectric power through contracts and generation stacks that we own. We are transporting that power from Eastern Washington out to the Seattle metro area on the other extreme of the state. So it's, again, a combination of both hydro that we own as a public power utility and hydro power that we contract out with our federal partners at the Bonneville Power Administration. And to help really drive home the story, our generation stack, so what we have to power the grid today, almost 80% of that is hydro, which is a large amount. However, a year ago, this used to be almost 90%. And we're seeing, again, back to that world is changing, we're seeing less snowpack due to climate change. And when there's less snowpack in the winter, that translates to less reserves in our hydro generation capacity. So this is where it's critical to thinking about new power resources, such as battery storage on both sides of the meter, so front of the meter and behind the meter, to power the grid in a cost affordable, clean and reliable way for our customers. So when we think about new power resources, again, we can't be solely reliant on just that almost 80% of hydro power that I've mentioned earlier. It requires adding new renewable energy resources, wind, solar, batteries, and making sure that these are firm resources and leveraging battery storage to help create that firmness. Historically, we've been a winter peaking utility. But again, with climate change, we're starting to see summer peaks emerge as well. Right now, at this time, we're actually not involved in any battery projects because, again, the whole landscape of batteries and load flexibility is new to us. It's not an issue we've had to worry about before in the past. I'm going to highlight a little bit of our energy conservation work, or often what you'll hear the term as energy efficiency. You don't have to memorize this graph or any shape or form, but really the point I want to drive home the part here is we've been really reliant on energy efficiency to help power the grid, and we've had fantastic savings through lighting. So replacing light bulbs, for example, or replacing HVAC equipment. Those energy efficiency savings are starting to dwindle over time. So it's going to make a greater reliance on that generation side of the equation. So again, batteries potentially playing a critical role here, given the decreasing reliance on energy efficiency. In addition, it's not just a generation challenge. It's also a transmission and distribution challenge. We have 330 miles of direct buried cable. These are aging assets that need to get replaced, and it's going to cost the public $2 billion over the next 10 years. So we need to think about what are alternatives to also replacing aging assets. Is this an opportunity where we can use batteries when we think about non-wire solutions here to help defer the costs and reduce the costs of replacing these assets moving forward? So to help illustrate the story, just some basic fundamentals. When we as a utility are thinking about, again, powering the grid, we think about two areas primarily on the demand side. We think about peak, so the maximum power that customers are going to consume instantaneously. So everyone getting into work or everyone, say, plugging in their EVs at that same time, we have to make sure that we can meet those peak. In addition, we also think about load, so the amount of power that we will use throughout the day. So you can have, again, peak times such as 5 to 9 that are much more costly to serve than, say, midnight to 6 a.m. And echoing similar items we mentioned before, we're starting to see customer electricity needs also change. We're seeing a drastic increase in transportation electrification. So again, more folks purchasing electric vehicles. Building electrification, we have strong local laws and local mandates that are helping our customers transition to electricity as opposed to fossil fuel-based generation, as well as increased volatility on the wholesale power market, which I'll touch on a little bit more of a slide. This is actually probably one of my favorite slides that I often get to talk about. And that's, again, really demonstrating our electrification growth moving forward. So the x-axis is the year. The y-axis is the average megawatt. Average megawatt, it's not a common unit, but think of it this way. One average megawatt can power about 1,200 Seattle homes. So those blue lines that you see on the left hand of the x-axis, that first line at the top, that's our historical peaks. And you'll notice it really doesn't hover over 2 gigawatts. Beneath it, you'll see our average load. And again, really doesn't go past beyond 1.2 gigs. However, we're again speaking to those customer behavior changes, the customer patterns changing, infrastructure changes. We're starting to see, or we're starting to model out a drastic increase in both our peak as well as our load for the next 20 years. And that's critical for us, the utility, to think about what are all the arrows that we have in our quiver to meet this challenge. I mentioned the rising prices and volatility of the wholesale power market. One arrow in our quiver is actually to buy power at the wholesale power market as opposed to generate the power ourselves. So again, taking a look at this graph, the x-axis is the year. The y-axis is the dollar per megawatt hour price. And if you take a look from 2001 to 2020, so starting as early as Western energy crisis, you might have heard of a small little company called Enron, might have been involved in that a little bit. But historically, from 2001 to 2020, the average megawatt hour price was only $38. However, what we've seen in the last 4 to 5 years is that price has almost tripled to 80 megawatt dollars per hour. That's the price of climate change. that increased volatility, those increased, more drastic weather events, that's an increased cost that goes to our ratepayers. So we have to, again, think about every arrow in our quiver. How can we deliver power in the most cost-effective way possible? As to our resource needs and how we're going to meet those needs, we build, as utilities, what are called integrated resource plans. So we model out the grid for the next 20 years, and we're looking at what do we need, say, in the year 2025 versus the year 2030 versus, say, the year 2043. And how do those needs change depending on location, time of day, and other factors? So on this table, the first set of rows in white are showing the resources that we will need at the front of the meter. So those are the resources that we as a utility will work to procure at the utility scale to help power the grid. And you'll notice that first row is batteries. And it's not like we weren't considering batteries before, but it goes back to that hydroelectric power. Hydroelectric power for us is extremely cheap and it's extremely cost effective for our ratepayers. And it wasn't until the 2022 model where we actually saw batteries become cost effective for the first time. Again, many things that the panel has already discussed here today, but it really, again, wasn't until this latest model that we saw, hey, batteries actually make sense in our generation stack to deliver power to our customers. So we need 200 megs of that by 2033. And this can change over time. Models change. We will get new input. The market will change. We will feed these inputs and maybe this number increases or decreases moving forward. But we have to be flexible to meet the needs of our customers in the current world we are in. In the second tranche of white rows at the bottom, these are what we often refer to as behind the meter assets. So behind the meter resources that we need to help as utility, help our customers get to help power the grid. And that last row beneath is demand response. That's a great opportunity for battery storage. So if customers already own, say, a power wall as an example, this is a great opportunity to leverage power walls to help power the grid. And speaking of opportunities, again, we're looking at both residential, commercial, and industrial spaces. Looking at those arrows again, there's not going to be a single silver bullet. We have to look at everything we have available and what's going to best meet the need of the utility and our customers at a given point in time. This can range, again, from thermostats, again, battery storage, as we mentioned. And what are the mechanisms that we want to help incentivize our customers to participate? Do customers want upfront checks? Do they want a credit? Like, what are ways that we can help them in this journey? So to help tie this all together, I'm going to present on a few opportunities that we actually have today for customers in our service territory who are potentially considering battery storage or who already have battery storage today in their households. And the first is our upcoming time of use program. So our colleagues in Con Ed, much more experience having time of use across their utility and their customers. This is brand new for the utility and brand new for our customers because we really didn't need it before in the past. So just to keep it super simple, we're introducing a time of use program to customers, all voluntary, in which you as a household get to determine, hey, maybe I want to join this program because I see this as an opportunity to save money. And that's based on what load can you shift? Or maybe your existing load pattern already meets the time of use schedule. So we're really encouraging folks to shift power away from that dark blue column, that 5 to 9 period, into ideally the cheaper tranches between, say, midnight and 6 a.m. We as a utility, we're actually building a tool right now as we speak to inform customers who often only think about their utility 6 minutes a year, but like, hey, if I were to keep my load and my behavior the same, am I to save money on this rate or am I to maybe spend more? So we're giving those customers that recommendation based on what they do today. And if maybe they want to still participate, we could give them recommendations as to how they can still save money. In parallel, we also have our net energy metering program. So again, solar and batteries are critical to powering the grid moving forward. And we think a lot about attachment rates of solar and batteries. Right now, we have a net metering program that is very generous. It compensates customers at the same retail rate. So if customers generate excess generation to the grid, we are paying them like for what they were to pay if they were to consume. So we really are encouraging customers to build solar generation in their house. And battery storage is a great complementary asset to this as well. And last but not least, as I was echoing before, like we were leaders really primarily in the energy efficiency space. The world is drastically changing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to rebuild the playbook from scratch. We can learn from our peers, such as at Con Ed. But think about the energy equipment that in general we're installing across households. How can we connect this with battery storage to automatically maybe have a world that is prices to devices? The customer isn't really thinking about it, but with tools like DERMS and everything, can we really optimize the customer's household to meet their needs in the most cost-effective, safe, and reliable way possible? That being said, that wraps up my part. Folks have questions, happy to save it for Q&A as well. Thank you.
The visual of the cost of climate change was really brought it home. I'd like to invite Oscar Delgado from Zebra to talk about Santiago and some Latin American cities he's been working with.
Thank you, Neil and Wyatt, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with this really nice and good-looking audience. I'm a little bit low of state of charge post-launch. So yeah, please bear with me if I distract myself. So I didn't prepare slides. I have like a mental map of what I'm going to cover. First, I'm going to introduce myself, Oscar Delgado, originally from Colombia. I work in our Washington, D.C. office. I work for the International Council on Clean Transportation, ICCT. We are a nonprofit, international, research-based. We act as technical partners for policymakers to clean up the transportation sector. I am a director for the Heavy Duty Vehicle Program, and I also co-lead one initiative named the Zebra Partnership that started in Latin America. It's a partnership that we started at ICT with C40 Cities, our another NGO partner based on the climate, the initiatives by the mayors to work on climate. And I'm going to cover today a little bit of Zebra, what it's about, then a little bit of Chile as a country, and end up in Santiago and a success story on electric buses. So Zebra is a market accelerator that we created. By the way, it's an acronym, Zero Emission Bus Rapid Deployment Accelerator. It's a market accelerator that we created in Latin America with the purpose to accelerate the market for electric buses. So we worked on 4 pillars. We want to accelerate the market, so we need 4 things: demand, supply, capital, and confidence in the technology. So in the pillar of demand, we work with the cities that were looking to transform the transportation system to electric buses, cities that had really nice goals and ambition. So we started with Bogotá in Colombia, Santiago in Chile, Sao Paulo in Brazil, Medellin in Colombia as well, and Mexico City in Mexico. We also work with fleets to handhold some of the operators. We, the ICT, we are very technical. We develop many tools to support truck electrification. So we have tools that help the bus operators right-size their depots to charge the buses. Also to do a route-level analysis in terms of energy consumption, compare diesel versus electric, and also total cost of ownership comparisons at a route level for them to prioritize, let's say, their transition planning on, let's say, let's start with these buses, let's start with these routes. On the supply side, when we started in Latin America, there were no buses to be purchased. And that was a big barrier. So we started securing commitments by global manufacturers of electric buses to bring commercially available products to the market, to the Latin American markets. We secured public commitments. Initially, all the Chinese wanted to sign, so we had many like the Yutongs, the BYD, etc. Then the Europeans got convinced, and we secured participation of a couple of Europeans, and there is one Brazilian OEM that committed to bring available products. On the capital side, we work similarly, but with investors. And this was led by C40 Cities. Our goal was to secure $1 billion of capital to be committed to be invested in well-prepared projects of electric buses in Latin American cities. We secured $1 billion, and actually it has mobilized. I always have issues with that word. Mobilized $4 million in investment, and actually very timely today. C40 launched a report about exactly that. So I'm gonna make an advertisement. Please, if you may, write in your browser ebusradar.org, and I'm going to talk a little bit about later. On the confidence side, what we do is work with all the stakeholders, communications work to demystify the technology, and we do a lot of peer-to-peer exchanges, let's say between cities, and also between operators. So we have champion operators in Santiago that are teaching lessons in Medellin. We have the system of the Santiago Transit Authority, which has a lot of success with the tenders, supporting Mexico City and those types of exchanges. And how are we doing? So if you already open ebusradar, ebusradar.org, in that page, we have, that's how we account for our impact. So you will see like a map that shows how many buses are currently in operation in the different cities in Latin America. I guess the total now is, we surpassed the 7,000 buses in Latin America very recently. And then there is also like a publication page, publications pages in which you can see all kind of our Zebra publications. So that's Zebra. Now I'm going to move to Chile. So Chile is a champion emerging market in terms of decarbonization, in terms of riding the wave of renewables and electrification. This, why is that happening? Why is this happening? Of course, there is bipartisan agreement. Okay, in Chile, you cannot say bipartisan. There is agreement across the political spectrum about the benefits of the transition to renewables and zero-emission vehicles. Why? Chile has lithium, Chile has copper, Chile has a lot of potential for renewables. Chile is very heavily dependent on oil imports. And they don't care too much about the local manufacturing of vehicles because they don't have any. They only import vehicles. So it's like the perfect example of why, let's say, there is agreement and continuity of policies, something that we are lacking in the elephant of the room. So yeah, that has been very helpful. So Chile has signed the NDCs into law. They have commitments. They have an electric mobility strategy that set up internal combustion engine phase-out targets for 2035 for passenger cars and buses, and in 2045 for coaches and trucks. They also have industrial policies. They are offering, for example, low-price lithium for companies that come to the country and elevate the supply chain. So now it's not about just extracting the minerals, but refining them. So they are doing things like that. So that's Chile. So I'm going to move now to Santiago. In Santiago, we have now, the largest electric bus fleet of any city outside of China. So only Shenzhen and Beijing have more buses in terms of percentage of the fleet than Santiago, Chile. When we started, around 2017, the process started with two buses in 2017. Today, there are more than 2,500 buses, which represent 40% of the vehicle stock. And by the end of this administration, which is Q1 next year, there will be 4,000 buses that represents close to 70% of the stock of buses in Chile. So it's like a really, really great example. What happened? What was the secret sauce for this to happen? Here enters kind of the public-private partnership and the business model. So Chile decided to separate the tenders for bus operation and bus supply. So there is a contract, let's say the winners of the tenders for bus supply, it comes an investor, they purchase the buses, and they lease them to the system. And there is another separate tender process for the operation of the buses. And the operators do what they do best, which is operate the buses. The risking of the investment is backed up by the government. The government has like a payment security guarantee. The government ensures the investor, the guy that is purchasing the buses, that they are going to receive a monthly payment no matter what during the full lifetime of the bus. So they have full certainty that reduces the capital cost for the investor and costs in general for the system as well. And the government is also now owning the depots. They are owning the e-bus depots. So it's like a really nice, it's like a clever model to assign the risk to the entity that can absorb it better, let's say. So we have the capital investors, they have the credit muscle to really make these purchases. They have lower cost of capital. They are in a stronger negotiating position with the OEMs because they are buying at large. These tenders are of thousands of buses, like around 1,000 each of these previous tenders. The operators are focused on what they do best, which is operate the buses. And let's say the depots are owned by the system, let's say the depots and the buses are owned by the system. So they, in case of an operator not complying with all the performance that they want, they could switch operators and assign buses and depots to the operators that arrive. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oscar. All right, we're running a little bit late, and I know that everybody has not had coffee, so I'm going to do something real quick. Please stand up. You'll thank me later. We're doing the stretch. Come on up, Sue, and then we'll...
So it's great to be with all of you, including folks who were here this morning, and want to move this conversation into the topic of EVs and how the batteries within EVs can play a really vital role in grid support broadly in terms of the grid as well as other applications, buildings, and other load. And I'm going to talk about it both in terms of that in-use activity as well as second life use. And hopefully this will inspire you to think about EVs and their batteries in a new way. And if you're involved in this ecosystem, include this in your planning. I think so much effort goes into the planning up front about getting an EV or any kind of vehicle into a fleet and planning for the use and the operation, but really critical to think about what are these other applications that you can plan for as well. And then, of course, thinking about the second life of those batteries that are there. So a little bit about WRI. Apparently, we have to take a poll. So raise your hand if you've heard of World Resources Institute. This will make my CEO happy to see so many hands there. If you don't know us, we are a global research organization. We work extensively around the world with 14 offices in 14 countries, around 2,000 people at that intersection of people, nature, and climate. More specifically, we look at different systems and how to make those work more sustainably. So energy, cities, forests, and transportation is actually embedded in those systems as well, and do a lot of work on research, data, collaboration with public and private partners. I am based in our U.S. office. I run our U.S. transportation program, and our flagship program is our electric school bus initiative. I wore my little pin here. actually lights up because it is electric also. Vashankha Thari is with me as well, somewhere in the room. And thank you. And so my examples are going to draw from that program that we've been working on the last 5 years. So a little bit more about that. So you have the context for electric school buses and their adoption. 20 million children depend on the school bus every day to bring them to school. And actually disproportionately those children come from low income and Black and brown communities. And that's really important because those buses, while they're a great and very important key to accessing education, they also are not great for children's health and for children's cognitive abilities because of the emissions associated with the diesel primarily and gasoline and some of the other fuels that they use. And so hence our effort to move towards electrification. The U.S. school bus fleet is close to 500,000 buses, and it comprises really the largest form of public transportation collectively in the country. So really, really vitally important and significant. Among the many reasons that school bus electrification is gaining momentum beyond the health benefits and the climate benefits, the job benefits, we can go into all of those as well, are the opportunity to bring in resiliency benefits as well. So I'll speak a little bit more about that as we go. So a little bit of grounding. Seems like a very intelligent group here, so I'm not going to dwell on it, but we have a slide in here about V2X. You may have heard of V2G. That's the vehicle to grid. We use the X to signify all the other things that it can be, including grid, any kind of load, any kind of building, maybe charging cell phones, and also, enabling renewable energy integration, storage, et cetera. And it's not a new idea per se. It's been around as long as electric vehicles, maybe not quite as long, but for many, many years. Developed and thought of some of the leading work happening just south of here at the University of Delaware. People may be familiar with that. But NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, for a long, long time, actually, I know has been investing in that work as well. And it's an exciting space and something that we think is really a key to unlocking and getting to scale with electrification, not of just school buses, but light duty vehicles, medium heavy duty vehicles, moving on into off-road applications as well. One of the reasons that electric school buses are so well suited to this application is a number of reasons. One, they have very predictable routes and schedules, pick the kids up at this time, drop them off at this time, go back to the depot, et cetera. They also have really rather large battery capacity. And there are opportunities through utility programs, and I'll speak to those in a moment, to compensate the potential for those batteries to support the grid. And, there's other applications as well that may not be have a revenue stream, but also bring value as well. And so it's one of the reasons that electric school buses have become one of the pilots and one of the areas where you're seeing this build out as an example. This is a map that we put together based on our research of where are utilities creating programs to incentivize and provide support for V2G programs. So you'll see they span the country, many different locations, and each of them a little bit different. So of course that makes it a little bit more complicated. I do want to emphasize that it's not the application that works for everyone. Sometimes we hear about V2G is going to pay for your bus or pay for your vehicle. Really caution people to not get overly excited about that, but it is the potential for additional revenue and additional benefit. First and foremost, the vehicle in the case of school buses needs to deliver the kids safely and hopefully on time to school. So we really want to emphasize that, but there is this additional benefit that can come from that. We're involved in a number of projects related to this map here, one out in California, supported by the California Energy Commission, working with 2 school districts to develop, this and kind of pilot this this application. We just started working with Xcel Energy based in Colorado on an effort there. They're really concerned about wildfire risk and the ability to support the grid with school buses potentially during some of those times of concern, and many other actually school districts around the country. So this is an urban focus. I will say that school buses are everywhere, but certainly many of them in cities. Cities don't always directly control the school district or the school buses. New York City is an exception to that. So New York City does have a city-based system, and we work with some of their vendors directly. Boston is another example, Washington, D.C. But by and large, there's around 16,000 school districts that are the ones that decide what kind of transportation their kids are receiving. So just putting a little bit of a dimension on that as well. So one school district that we have worked with closely is Cajon Valley in California, outside of or really within San Diego. And they're one of the first actors in this space. I think they're a good example for a couple of reasons. One, because of the really strong partnership that they've had with their utility. I don't know if our utility folks, and we've got at least one in the room here, who's also very involved in these kinds of programs as well. But utility partners have been very key to this. And they've really just demonstrated that this can be done. And they had to work out a number of kinks along the way and work through it. I'm not going to go through actually too much detail. We actually did a case study on this, and it's up on our website, electricschoolbusinitiative.org, and just encourage you to look at that. The bottom line is that they proved this out over a number of years, proved that the technology can work, proved that the process can work, that it's possible to both serve your school district, serve your students, and, support the utility as part of, they have an emergency load response program that actually will pay for the ability to access the power from the batteries during some critical peak time use during largely summer months and evening hours. But they've proven that out. And that's not the only example. There are examples maybe closer here in Beverly, Massachusetts, in places like in Cherokee, North Carolina. I think they may be doing it in Charlotte too, but Oklahoma City is working on some new projects as well. So it is something that we think has application in many different places. And then I just want to end with a little bit on the battery circularity piece of things. So the V to G is really when the battery is in use, driving and transporting. And the second part of it is thinking about, in addition to the upstream concerns and some of the things that were talked about this morning, and getting the mining right and the supply chain, how can we squeeze as much value and therefore as much environmental value out of the batteries? And that's through both second life use as well as recycling. So we really want to emphasize the opportunity to take a pause and move through that second life use on the way to recycling. And folks may be familiar with some of the recycling efforts that are already stood up here in the U.S. and elsewhere. Actually, Vishant and I had a chance to visit a big one out in Nevada, Redwood, and they too have recently thought about not just the recycling piece, but have started a second life use program. I think they call it Redwood Energy. So just kind of an indication that I think the first jump, maybe understandably, was to recycling, but now there's some growing interest in how do we build out that second life use market as well. Again, to add value and to add value to the users, but then also extract as much value out of the batteries as possible. And my point here is that among many possible pathways this could take, utilities, we should talk, are a great opportunity to think about that. We have at least one example of a utility here in the United States that has shown interest in this application. So Dominion Energy, which is a utility based in Virginia, is already a leader in school bus electrification a number of years ago, about or 6 years ago, sponsored the adoption of around 50 electric school buses in some of the school districts in Virginia, specifically with the interest both in Viridi, and they've now moved forward and as of this past summer have executed on the Viridi aspect of that. And then looking ahead, they have set up their arrangement with the school districts so that they're able to access or have sort of first right of access to those batteries when they're done with their useful life in the bus, with the idea that those will be assets to them and provide grid support. It's still kind of early days on that. I spoke with the project managers of that just as I was preparing for this presentation, and they have a 15-year warranty on those batteries, which is actually pretty unusual. It's pretty long time. So they still have a few more years, quite a few more years to figure out what does that look like. But it is something that they're starting to think about now, and think about how those batteries could provide that frequency support or voltage support, frequency regulation or voltage support, or maybe even renewable energy integration. So very excited about the role that batteries can play in many different forms, and love to answer any questions. I think we have some breaks coming up, and we'll go from there. So thank you.
So in the interest of timing, one of our presenters has to catch a flight and the other has a conflict. So I'm going to introduce Eddie Chiang to the stage to talk about moment energy.
Hey everybody, big crowd compared to this morning, I guess. But I'm Eddie Chiang, co-founder and CEO at Moment Energy, and our mission is to enable all retired EV batteries to be repurposed into stationary storage. So we've been at this for about 6 years now, which has been pretty exciting, and very similar to what all the utilities have said earlier. The grid has been aging, and we've been really trying to catch up. Even without data centers, we've been really lagging in terms of grid infrastructure. And now that we're deploying with a lot of data centers as well, we need to accelerate our time to power as a whole. So I'm sure everybody knows what Second Life is at this point. It seems like a couple groups have talked about it. But for us, what we see is that these batteries often have over 80% life left after its time in a vehicle for 10 to 15 years. Also, these battery cells have extremely high charging and discharge rates. For the battery nerds out there, typical lithium ion is about 2 to 4 hour duration. We can hit 30 minutes to an hour. So 2 to 4 times faster discharge rates as well. And the key aspect is because these EV battery cells have a much higher C rating, which is super exciting. And now, especially with regulations such as anti-FEOC, and as well as a lot of producer responsibility laws as well that have been passed out in China, as well as half of all EU countries, we're seeing massive tailwinds to make sure that these batteries don't end up in landfills. They're not prematurely recycled, but actually they're repurposed before. So this is one of our systems. This is the Luna system. So our Luna system is 400 kilowatt hour building blocks, and we can scale this up to over 60 plus megawatt hours. And the cool thing about this is at Moment Energy, over even 2 to 3 years ago, we had been the first company to ever achieve UL 1974. In other words, literally our facility is one of the only ones that can repurpose test and assemble EV batteries into stationary energy storage legitimately. And now, as of July, we actually achieved a full UL product certification as well for this product. So we're literally the only company with product certification for Second Life, which is super exciting. And why does that matter? Right. So when we work with a lot of our partners, such as Amazon, we help them with repurposing of massive EV fleets where even from one of our 20 automaker partners, we have up to 8 gigawatt hours of battery supply. They're really struggling with EV charging, a lot of high power applications. When they're trying to install even 5 to 10 EV chargers, the local utility says, yes, but we're going to have to upgrade the power lines, the transformers, and that's going to take $20 to $30 million and a 3-year wait time on transformers. So instead of that, that's a massive CapEx expense. And we actually heard from Seattle City Lights, end of line is really important. So we can actually land batteries there instead, charge at 3 a.m. and discharge around 12 p.m. when you need to charge EVs very quickly as a whole. And as also referenced as well, we're really glad to see that there have been more movement in the second life space, which is super exciting. Massive differentiators for us, again, is we're the only ones certified. So we're actually insurable when it comes to deploying. And when we deploy with all of the other hyperscalers as well, they've been extremely interested in us because they need to make sure that their massive billion-dollar data center assets are not at risk by any energy assets. So we took the safe path, as well as we also took the energy dense and listening to customer path. So within 1 acre, we can land about 75 megawatt hours, which is over double the amount of energy storage that we can land compared to a lot of our competitors. So again, we actually have been deploying projects all across North America over the past 6 years. We started off in a lot of off-grid spaces, and we've deployed the most amount of different automaker batteries, different chemistries, as well as different state of health batteries. And with all that data that we've collected, we really have now gone to one of the most exciting markets, which is New York. So we're actually looking to deploy a couple projects out in the Bronx. There's a lot of multi-dwelling units. There's about 28 that we have been siting as well as a food processing center. And all of these applications are very similar. In the end, the customers, such as the multi-dwelling units, as the climate is getting hotter and hotter, they need to install more AC units and HVAC units. That's going to increase loads overall, all the way to food processing, as well as they modernize a lot of their equipment and automate a lot of their equipment. They're going to need a lot more power, and that's where batteries really fit in as a whole. And again, here are some of our deployments. They're all commercial. I think that's another differentiator. Every single project that we've deployed, a customer has paid for. And we've went from off-grid remote communities, reducing diesel consumption by 75%, no solar, no wind. It's just a diesel generator plus our batteries, and we create a hybrid car-like system, all the way to now we're at airports. Again, fire safety is extremely important in these critical areas, and we've checked off all those boxes as well, again, due to our differentiator there. So currently we're located in Vancouver up in Canada, but we're currently expanding as well, which I'll have in other slides. And a massive differentiator is we are extremely AI driven in terms of all the data that we've collected through differing automaker batteries, chemistries, and state of health, like I mentioned earlier. All that data can really help us ensure that these batteries last an extra 10 years. So currently our lifetime is 15 years, not 1 or 3, 15. And with our battery management system, we're aiming for 25, which is super exciting. And then our goal is to take all that data in our battery management system to expand into sodium ion, solid state, name any new chemistry. We're extremely excited about all of them, but we want to make them even safer and longer lasting than what the chemistries allow for today. Maybe I'll skip over some of this other aspect, which I've touched upon, but we're super excited. And this is kind of why I'm here. We're expanding. We're currently a team of 60. We're expanding to 100 up in Vancouver. And this is our Vancouver expansion to date, as well as we are building the first Second Life Gigafactory supported by the US government. So we're landing this in Austin. And the key aspect here is to provide extremely compelling batteries that are made in America. So again, we don't work with battery cells. We typically work at the module or pack level. So there's a lot less CapEx that's required. But our real goal is all in to be below $90 per kilowatt hour, all in. Not cell, not module, all in. And right now, Chinese batteries are around 180 if you buy from China today. So we're super excited. We're hiring a ton. So we'd love for you guys to join us on our mission. We're looking for battery manufacturers, engineers, production staff, all the way to supply chain and business development as well. Thank you so much for listening. We're really excited to continue scaling and making sure that Second Life batteries have a home across the world. Thanks.
So he has to be out of the door in the next 5 minutes. I still would love a chance to ask him one question. EVs have been around for decades. What's taken so long? Why is repurposing in a growing industry now? And what are its potentials for growth? So I'd love to hear your story on this in perspective.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, we've been at this for about 6 years now. So especially around 6 years ago, we heard other companies that tried to do it even 10 years prior. But the key aspect had typically been supply, how many EVs have been on the road to date. Now today, again, from one of our automakers, we have 8 gigawatt hours of supply. We're seeing that there's not only just consumer EVs that have been on the road for 10 to 15 years, and we expect over the next 5 years, there's going to be 950 gigawatt hours of battery supply. And, even with recycling capacity, they're only going to recycle about 12% of that. We need to make sure that we have more repurposers, more recycling capacity, more innovation in the space so that these batteries don't end up in landfills. So that is massively the inflection point, and also the commercialization of a lot of fleets. So we talked about school buses as one major key. We've seen delivery trucks, of course, in the case of Amazon or USPS or all these other players. And because these vehicles are used as tools, right, rather than just getting to and from work, where you're driving them maybe for 2 hours a day, these vehicles often reach end of life in not 10 to 15 years, but they reach end of life in 2 to 3 years. They hit that 200,000 or 300,000 miles very quickly. So because of that, we've found that we need to accelerate quickly. We need to build that gigafactory as soon as possible, both in the US as well as Canada, to serve the global demand today. And we just need cheap batteries, right? We need cheap, high quality batteries where we can source domestically and keep these minerals not sent across the ocean.
Thank you so much, Eddie. We have one other speaker with a hard stop coming up. And so I'd like to invite Stephen Meersman up to talk about Zenobe.
First of all, super excited about what Moment is doing. As you can hear from my accent, I've come from across the pond. And what I aim to talk about is not necessarily the batteries, but diesel generators and how batteries can actually displace them today, save money, and save the environment. Now, who's Zenobe? What do? We're actually a vertically integrated battery player, not on the manufacturing side, but in terms of applications. We started as a grid-scale battery developer, owner, and operator. We've got a gigawatt operational today. We then use those skills of how do you interconnect, how do you monetize batteries to then actually start helping on some of the things that were talked about before, like how do you charge 200 buses in one location without overloading the grid. So we started helping with that, doing charging as a service, but eventually also financing the batteries on the vehicle so that an electric vehicle looks again like a diesel vehicle from a CapEx perspective, and guaranteeing the capacity of the fuel tank for 15 years, 18 years, 25 years, and replacing the batteries every 5 years, every 7 years, depending on the application. We've now got a fleet actually that is out of date already of about 4,000 electric buses and trucks in operation in various applications, all the way down from Bondi Beach in Australia to Tampere in Finland, so a wide range of applications. About less than 10% of that is currently in the US, but we're working on that. And we've had actually some batteries come back from our vehicles that we've then integrated with partners into systems to power construction, film shoots, quite a few recent Marvel movies, and some music festivals, just to try and work out how far can we push value from these systems. Because if you work on the second life, you can make the first life cheaper. If you make the first life cheaper, you get a huge suction effect, which then means we can have more local supply chains to manufacture those systems. Yeah, you know all this already. What is second life? So I won't really go through that. Diesel generators, why do you care, right? A diesel generator is a horrible thing. Why? It's horribly, horribly inefficient. If you look at the chart on the right, it's completely illegible, but less than 40% of the actual energy that goes in a diesel generator is actually generating output. And that is at its most efficient. So if you look at the curve on the left then, which has been a bit butchered, you will see that as loading drops, efficiency drops. So most generators actually operate at about 10% load and roughly the same efficiency. So if you go to like a film shoot at night, like we did The Crown, we did Venom and a few other ones, and what you walk around and you're like measuring all the actual electricity consumption, you see that the generators are always running, creating heat, but that electricity is not consumed. Like on one night, we actually saw that 500 kVA generators was charging 3 mobile phones. So there's a huge, if you have a startup or have a startup idea to look at digitization in construction and all these sort of off-grid industries, you're going to make a lot of money. But now the second thing is loads are misunderstood. Another thing a diesel generator is very bad at is ramping up and down, right? Batteries are like a digital technology. You can get instant output, full capacity. Generator can't do that. So what you have to do is oversize them so that they can react quickly enough to peak loads. Like think a construction site, right? You've got a tower crane, it's lifting something up, huge power spike, inrush currents, all the fun stuff. So you tend to oversize a generator 4 to 5x, which A means you're paying a Greco a fortune to have that generator. But then secondly, you're again moving to the left on that fuel efficiency curve. So again, what you then see is that your utilized useful power coming out of your generator drops from 40% to 7%. And if you then go to some of the new after treatment systems, they then put on these generators to capture the NOx and the sulfur and all that stuff, we're down to 3% useful output. And this is where batteries win. It's not because people say, oh, I can't get this amount of power. It's actually people overestimate the amount of power that they need greatly. So we've seen projects, we're currently helping the production of a nuclear power plant with small batteries, because when you're building a nuke, guess what you don't have? Power. So they're powering all these little tower cranes with diesel generators, bleeding money. We're saving them 100 million in fuel over 10 years. Now, if you look at these applications, again, you see all these use cases jumping up and down, huge spikes, but actually the overall energy underneath the line is very limited. So you can have actually, in many cases, displace a 500 kVA generator with as little as a 50 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt hour battery. So it opens up a huge field of applications. So 3 quick projects on the left. You can see actually one of our grid-scale battery power plants, 600 megawatt, 1.2 gigawatt hour grid-scale battery up in Scotland. We also have a pressure to go live on time. It's not quite as critical as with data centers, where you lose an absolute fortune. But the problem is you need to wait for your grid interconnection. So when you commission battery sites, they often use diesel generators again. Now, we started, and then a load bank. So you use a diesel generator to first charge it, but then you have inrush, or on the transformers, you have inrush currents, which you then need to attenuate with a load bank, which again, you have to rent and spend a fortune on. So we eventually displaced a 2 megawatt load bank and a 2 megawatt generator with 200 kilowatt second life battery power systems, and we saved about 200 grand per site that goes live, which is pretty cool. Second, the one in the middle, that's the nuclear plant I talked about. I won't go through that again. And then thirdly, on the right, is a DC microgrid we've built that is fully portable. So I don't know if anybody here watches rally racing. It's an electric rally. They go to places affected by climate change like Greenland, the Sahara Desert, the Amazon, and organize races there to create awareness. The problem is everything has to fit on a boat. They have to bring everything with them and then take it away again. It's like Burning Man, but year long, basically. So the problem is if you're organizing an electric rally, you can't sort of come there and bring a lot of diesel with you. So what we did is actually foldable solar panels, a hydrogen generator with some methanol storage, and then a bunch of power skids, as we call our second life systems, and then a DC skid that basically acts as the brain for the whole setup. And what we again worked out was, we never had to turn the backup generators on, so that was great. We improved the efficiency of the hydrogen system because it could run on a steady load, and they saved quite a lot of money. But these are very intensive, hard applications, and if it can work there, it can probably work at the gateway tunnel that they're digging here and annoying a lot of people with the noise and the pollution. So what I'm trying to say is batteries can do more than you think, and you should look at always what's the second best alternative. It isn't that generator belching out power the whole time. It is actually knowing what you need, right-sizing the battery, and then the econs will take care of itself. Thank you.
Before he has to head out and we start our other presentations, I'd love to ask you one question as well. You've touched on these case studies and what Zenobe is doing, which are wonderful. So which one excites you the most? What is the most exciting application of second life batteries in your mind right now?
Well, I think construction is interesting because what we're seeing there is long projects, interconnection queues are becoming a real thing, not just for data centers, but also for people building residential developments in the heart of our communities. And you're not just reducing pollution, you're saving these people an absolute fortune, right? We're reducing diesel bills by 40%. And we're also helping them become more considerate contractors by reducing the noise, right? Because these diesel generators annoy neighbors. So that's one thing. But I'm going to mention a second one, which is, again, knowing what you consume. Electric ships, right? We've powered an electric river barge with Second Life EV bus batteries. And people say, how the hell is that possible? These things sail 24/7. Yes, they do. But they stop every 6 hours to take some containers off and put them back on again. So what's one container more with a bunch of batteries in there? So think of what's possible. 6,000 barges on the Mississippi River, 6 megawatt hours per ship. If you're looking for an offtake for momentum batteries, that's where I would look.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you, Eddie, who I hope is on time because he has to go to Newark. Next, we're going to ask Evan to come up and talk about Viridi. Evan, if you don't mind taking the stage.
All right, so I'm going to talk about Viridi, which is a company based here in New York, primarily in Buffalo and Rochester. And then we just recently opened up in Northern California when we took over what used to be Moxion batteries, some of you may have heard of. I like to show the factory. This is our main factory in Buffalo. It was a former GM and American Axle factory. And it sort of resonates with our company because our CEO is a very purpose-focused person. He purchased this specifically because it's in one of the poorest areas of the state of New York, and he sees Viridi as a vehicle to a certain extent to experiment with new worker development models. And I'll talk about that a little bit because it's an important part of what we do. All right, so Viridi manufactures battery energy storage systems. It does not manufacture batteries. Our special sauce comes in and taking battery cells and putting them into the module. We have a fantastic innovation leader. It's Dr. J.R. Linna from MIT, and he has developed an architecture that effectively eliminates the risk of thermal runaway in lithium-ion batteries. Like the other companies, we are 9540 listed, and it's really, he sort of sees that the issue of safety is not just an issue of chemistry, it's an issue of chemistry plus architecture. That architecture, and it also incorporates technology from NASA that we are commercializing, but that technology is built into modules, which is then built into 50 kilowatt hour packs, and that's the basis for essentially all of our products. Another sort of distinguishing feature is we do both stationary, going to talk about some of our deployments, and also mobile. We have a very extensive business in mobile. We're about 50-50 in how we're deployed. The stationary does all the things that we know best can do. The mobile has been very effective in things like music festivals, including Burning Man, which we've powered for 3 years now, emergency response, construction sites, and things like that. So the sort of core of our company, as you know, was a lot of the discussion today, is safety. We really did, our CEO really did believe that safety was going to be the defining feature of how batteries were going to fulfill the role that we all know that they should. So I want to play this real quick. It's pretty short, and you guys are all battery people, so you know this. So this first video, which is very short, is essentially our 9540A test without our technology. And as you know, you force one cell into thermal runaway, and from there it just goes on its merry way, and it's quite impressive and quite terrifying. The next video is the exact same type of pack, same process, with our architecture. And it has the benefit of being incredibly boring. That smoke there is not really smoke, it's steam. The technology that we have leveraged from NASA is a coolant package which is wicked to any cell that goes out of, that starts to go into thermal runaway, and it disperses on that battery, cools it for that period of time that's necessary to prevent thermal runaway. So it is a very effective system, and anybody who's interested, we can feel free to reach out to me, and we can set up some more discussions. This is just a data representation of that same test. As you can see, the red line is the cell that we are forcing into thermal runaway. Once the chemical reaction starts, it shoots up to about 600 degrees C. And that is when you start to have that thermal runaway. But you can see that all of the cells that are directly adjacent to that do not change temperature virtually at all. And that's why this system's effective. And this is, I just think a good representation of it. So again, that's the core of our technology. On the storage side, we are, again, sort of about 50-50 storage and communications, because as all of you know, just having a dumb brick of energy is not enough. That's not how we're going to get to Grid 2.0. So the other half of our company, based in Rochester, drawing a lot from RIT, is a communications, computer science, AI-enabled IoT company. We have one of the most sophisticated communication systems in the battery storage area. It can obviously detect anything about state of charge, the conditions, heat, et cetera, but also ambient conditions. It can connect to other loads, can connect back to the utility. It's just a very, very strong and effective system. And we believe the combination of those two things of ultra-safe storage and really sophisticated communication has created a really good product. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about, where they've been deployed. We have about 80 megawatt in the field. We are not a new startup. We've gone through our Series D financing. And as I say, about 80 megawatt in the field already deployed. Because our batteries are so safe, they can be deployed. They've been approved to deploy inside, which is relatively rare, as you know. This is at the University of Buffalo. It is 600 kilowatt hour deployed inside their medical research facility. Some of the reasons that we all, have talked about earlier. And again, it's also interesting to hear how it resonates. They really did this as a time to power play. They had brought in new electron microscopes, and the utility was saying, great, we'll get you the power in about 4 or 5 years, about $6 or $7 million. Instead, they asked us to come in and install this 600 kilowatt hour. They use it to turn on and run the microscopes. It cleans the power. The power runs through the batteries. It cleans the power. And then, of course, once they're in there and they realize how versatile they are, they also use that now to load shift and do the other things the batteries can do. That's been operating really absolutely without incident since 2023. This is a relatively new deployment. This is on the roof. People are always talking about that rooftop deployment of batteries, certainly in any urban setting. I know we're talking a lot about it here in New York City. These are the Denver public libraries, and they want to do it to leverage their renewables. They're putting solar on the roof, and then they also use it for peak shaving. Very, very happy with that deployment. And then, as I say, we also have our mobile deployment. I don't know why that's doing that. Our most frequently used product is 3 of our 50 packs along with our AI. Anybody know why that's happening? But just some of the deployments, which I'll try to speak quickly because it's going to move on its own. The Rochester Jazz Festival, the New York State Fair, the Governor's Ball here in Queens. We understand this is the first time a mobile BESS was ever deployed here in the city. And then, of course, Burning Man. The first year we had about 30 units out there. And that was the year they had the tremendous flood, which basically the batteries saved their butts. Because, as we were saying earlier, you can't always get the fuel there. If they used to run on generators, so they were so happy. Then the next year they had about 66 of them out there. I believe we delivered 100 megawatt of power powered the entire festival, which goes on for I think about 2 weeks. So again, really, really successful deployments. And then emergency response. This is for US EPA. You may remember that hazardous a train derailment in Ohio, East Palestine, which had a lot of very hazardous materials in it. It was a terrible situation. Tremendous groundwater contamination. Our batteries power all of the pumping systems out there for that remediation. Earlier was mentioned, the amount of noise that you have with an ice generator. That was a big driver here because, EPA, they go out and they do the community acceptance, and the community was furious to have all of these generators running, so they switched them out with our batteries. That's been really successful. Now I want to just very briefly say, the reason I talk about the factory in the beginning is because when John, our CEO, created Viridi, he also was created and was the founding employer for a very important NGO called Green Force. And, I spent 20 years as the chief sustainability officer of Honeywell, and we tried this a few times. I think John really nailed it, and it's important for workforce development everywhere. He hired a faith leader from that community, and we established this nonprofit. And because that faith leader really understands the community, he was able to be, very effective in getting applicants from the community. And they get training for work in the company, they get jobs in the company, and then most importantly, they get wraparound services their entire career, including stock options in the company. We have about an 86% retention rate. And for anybody in manufacturing, that is way off the charts. So about 70% of our hiring is from the 4 zip codes surrounding the facility, and that is pretty much about the most disadvantaged community in the entire state. So we're very proud of that. So that's us. It's extremely safe batteries that are extremely well connected, and this terrific workforce development.
And next, I'd like to invite David Hammer up to stage. Welcome to the Urban Battery Forum again, and we're about to talk about urban electric power.
All right. Thanks, everybody. How we doing? All right, a whole day of sitting, being talked at. It's really exciting. I'll try to keep this one quick, breezy, entertaining. I'm David Hammer. I'm the co-founder of Popwheels. First of all, I just want to say it's really cool to be invited to speak here. We are a much younger company than the other companies that have a chance to come up here and talk about what they're doing. And it's frankly, it's inspiring for me to get a chance to look at a bunch of companies that have really been able to make very real and meaningful traction in the world of batteries. And it's something that we're very much on our journey for, but it's an honor to share the stage with you folks. So thank you. All right, so Popwheels, we are in New York City. We're a Brooklyn-based company. We are born out of New York City's battery fire crisis, which I'm sure many of you have heard about, but let's recap a couple things. Right, in the last couple of years, there have been well more than 1,000 structural fires caused by mostly e-bike batteries, mostly being charged in improper environments. That's because your average delivery worker, of which there's about 100,000, most of whom use e-bikes, they mostly use the same 2 bike models. This actually becomes very important. And they keep on charging. They have low quality batteries. They last about 3 to 4 hours. They need multiple batteries to get through the day. And they charge them in unsafe environments because they need access to them. So they'll pay some bodega, they'll pay some e-bike shop to keep their second battery charged so they can pick it up midway through a day. The other thing to think about is, there's a major economic factor. And there's one thing that I think kind of flows through Popwheels' core. It's understanding that the economic questions cannot be separated from the safety questions when you think about batteries. Your average delivery worker spends well north of $1,500 a year on batteries and battery charging. Right? That number was a little bit lower, but frankly, as FDNY has correctly cracked down on non-certified batteries, the cost of owning multiple batteries, of keeping them charged, of dealing with them when they get replaced, of having some e-bike shop that's going to hide your battery in their basement so you can pick it up midway through the day, those costs have all gone up. Again, it's worth pausing and saying it's incredible that there's been the street-level adoption of electric micromobility. That's not a small thing. This is not something we want to put back in the jar. But there are real costs, and we have to be cognizant of that. Our recognition at Popwheels was that a battery swapping network can solve both the safety and the economic problems at the same time. So instead of owning and charging their own batteries, Delivery workers, when they sign up for Popwheels, they give up their batteries. We're going to talk about this a little more in a second, but we have a partnership with Uber where Uber will actually buy your old low-quality battery off of you. Right? From that day forward, you're only going to use Popwheels batteries. As I mentioned before, delivery workers almost all own the same bike model, so you have a de facto fleet commonality. They check out their batteries from a network of fire-safe kiosks we've been deploying citywide. Those batteries are drop-in compatible with their bikes. They ride them around. They can return them to any other kiosk. And again, this has 3 values for them. I'd love to tell you that safety is the first one, and it's obviously a big part of our DNA. But the first reason delivery workers use us, and we have a wait list, thankfully, in the thousands at this point, is because it's cheaper. It saves them money up front. Hundreds of dollars out the door, right? Right from day one. Second of all, actually allows them to work longer hours. So not only is it cheaper, but actually enables them to earn more. And yes, no delivery worker wants to have an e-bike battery charging in their bedroom, right? We hear stories about people who sleep with their windows open so that if their battery were to catch fire in the middle of the night, they could throw it out the window. So ultimately, we're able to solve all 3 problems at the same time. We're able to be safer, cheaper, and easier. Now, to do this, we had to build some of our own technology, right? Battery swapping networks are more ubiquitous in parts of Asia, but nobody had built a battery swapping network that met New York City's fire code. And for us to do this, we had to develop a system of our own design that could actually put out an e-bike battery fire inside one of our cabinets. So we actually designed an ejection and extinguishing mechanism in which if a battery begins any of the signs of thermal runaway, we automatically eject it into a mounted tank full of proprietary fire suppressant mixture. We've tested this in order to meet FDNY standards. We had to test this in a UL 9540A style test where we had to ignite it and show there was no contagion to any other batteries. And we successfully passed it at a nationally recognized testing lab. There's a brand new standard that we helped architect called UL 1487 that we are looking forward to being compliant with as soon as the labs start testing for it. So that wasn't the only key piece of technology, but certainly in terms of earning the trust of New York City's fire department was our number 1 priority, and that's how we made it happen. And we've seen incredible success. So we, about a year and a half ago, did a pilot with the New York City DOT on solutions for the battery fire crisis, and we were thankfully the top performer in that pilot. Right, 96% of delivery workers who joined us for the pilot stayed to become paying customers afterwards. 90% of them completely gave up their battery, stopped charging at home altogether. This is the way to battery safety, is to get them out of the business of owning and charging their own batteries altogether. They are complicated. We might say even an industrial asset, right? There's no reason they need to be keeping 1.25 kilowatt hours of energy next to their bed at night. And some delivery workers are reporting up to $5,000 of extra earnings per year because they can work longer hours. So there's really a lot of value. So we took this to market. Earlier this year, we launched the first battery swapping hub anywhere in North America. That's Congressman Dan Goldman opening it. That's in Hudson Square. And we again launched that in partnership with Uber, where Uber offered to start buying low-quality bad batteries and offering them free service on Popwheels for the first few months. And we've seen incredible uptake. We have literally hundreds of delivery workers at that site every day. If you're ever interested, that site is at the corner of Dominic and Hudson in Hudson Square, and you're welcome to stop by and watch folks using it all day long. It's really an exciting thing to see. And we're growing. So that is a live map, or it's a screenshot of a live map of every one of our batteries that's currently live in New York City. Every battery has to be GPS tracked for all sorts of reasons. We have about 25 kiosks live just in New York. We're serving well over 500 delivery workers and well over 1,000 batteries deployed. And that's basically in about 5 months since we started taking this to market. We expect in the next year or two, we should have hundreds of these stations live. We really believe, scale-wise, this is going to look like City Bike. This is going to be the next piece of urban infrastructure in New York. And that's really cool. We're really proud of that. We're really excited to be a major part of solving the battery fire crisis in New York. But I think what we've learned along the way is that's only the first half of the story. So recently, what we started to realize is that when we are deploying these urban scale battery infrastructure, that all sorts of other organizations can benefit from that. So we started with Whiz. Whiz is an e-bike rental company. They rent e-bikes to delivery workers. And they don't want to be in the business of owning batteries. That's not a differentiator for them, right? It's a headache. And their customers have many of the same problems that every delivery worker faces around. Well, what do I do when my battery runs out? What do I do? How do I have access to a second one? And so about 3 months ago, we announced a partnership with Whiz. And now Whiz delivery workers can check out batteries from our network of Popwheels cabinets. So we started to see this idea that we're not just building this for our own customer base, But this is really almost a platform, an application layer that lots of different types of players can play into. And then we realized it's not just about mobility. Today, actually literally today, if you were to swing by New Climate Futures down at New Lab, what you see is us demonstrating for the first time. We're calling it the Pop Cart, although someone said we should have called it Pop Meals. What this is it is an adapter that allows food carts, which most of whom have, let's say, a 2.5 kilowatt generator, to instead of using a generator, switch to using Popwheels batteries. The exact same batteries that go into e-bikes can now be slotted into an adapter, plugged in just like a generator, and this is the key thing, cost neutral to gas generators. So day one, there's no extra cost, you can just make it work. We think this is a really incredible thing because it starts to tell the story about what happens when ubiquitous urban battery infrastructure is available. It's not just about mobility. It's about all sorts of powerful, novel applications. Why do we have to operate small-scale gas generators in an urban environment? How can we create the infrastructure to make it so that's redundant, it's unnecessary? And one of the things we're realizing is that what you would need is ready access to a battery anywhere in the city, and that's how we can solve that. And then buildings started reaching out. Because they started noticing that, hey, these cabinets, they've got, let's say, 20 to 40 kilowatt hours of energy inside of them, right? Many of our deployments were wiring behind the meter in buildings. When you're not deploying these for delivery workers, maybe you could help us do some peak shaving, some demand response. And so what we're realizing is that this isn't just about e-bikes, this isn't just about mobility, this isn't just about gas generators, that this is a piece of distributed energy urban infrastructure. We started by solving a very concrete problem, and that problem has allowed us to be able to attack a market and attack it very successfully. But ultimately, we're starting to realize there's a much more expansive vision here. We think of ourselves really as an urban scale micro-utility. And we're expanding. We are live in New York City. We are live in Washington, D.C. That green flag in Toronto is a lie. We are live there in a couple weeks. But it's coming. It's coming. We're waiting on some authorizations there. And we're starting to realize this is, I think when I started this business, we saw it as a New York City business. We are New Yorkers. We are solving it to solve the battery fire crisis. But this realization that cities can benefit from this kind of distributed battery infrastructure to solve mobility problems, yes, but to solve all sorts of other challenges as well is something that other cities can benefit from as well. And so we have many cities right now that we're planning expansion on. We should be live in 12 cities by the end of next year, and we're growing rapidly beyond that. And lastly, I just wanted to say, like, what we started by focusing, right, our core, our DNA is really saying, how can we solve real problems at a cost-effective price point for working people in the city? That's where we come from. That's what we believe in. That's where we want to be. That's what we got. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, David. Inspiring, problem-driven, impactful, and has the potential to really make a difference for a lot of people who it means the most. I'd like to welcome our last presenters to the stage. Hui, if you could come up and talk a little bit about Cruso.
So I will try to keep this exciting and interesting for everyone. So Sue teed up my presentation really nicely earlier by mentioning that Redwood Materials realized that used EV batteries still have a lot of value, and they've built this new business called Redwood Energy. We've also heard several people mention that data centers and AI have really driven up electricity demand. So I'm really excited to share with you today what Cruso is doing to power the future of AI with Second Life EV batteries. So in case you guys haven't figured it out, Cruso is not a battery company. We are a vertically integrated AI infrastructure company. We take a really, really energy-first approach to building AI infrastructure. We have flipped the script on building AI data centers. Traditionally, data centers are built, usually in a market like Virginia, where there's a huge concentration of data centers, and then they go to the utility and expect to be able to get connected to the grid. Unfortunately, due to that huge demand in power, today, that's really very, very challenging. There is a long queue to get your load approved. So we flipped the script by bringing load to where energy is. Cruso is most well known for our hyperscale data centers, such as the one that is going up in Abilene, Texas, that is going to serve Oracle and OpenAI. At the other end of the spectrum, we just launched a modular AI data center product called Cruso Spark that we are powering with used EV batteries. So, as people have mentioned, AI is driving up energy demand. And I just wanted to give you a few numbers so that you understand the scale. The share of US electricity that is going to power data centers is somewhere around 4 to 5% today. And that is expected to more than double to over 12% according to the DOE by 2030. And the power demand of data centers globally is about the same. It's expected to more than double. In terms of capacity, today the US data center market is about, call it 25 to 30 gigawatts of installed capacity. And McKinsey thinks that over the next few years, we have to build 50 gigawatts of additional data center capacity. So that's huge. We're talking about, a tripling of the data center capacity. So one of the really important things to Cruso is how do we power this sustainably? Of course, renewables is, one of the possible pathways. But the challenge of renewables is obviously its intermittency. Data centers are known to require 5 nines reliability. So the intermittency of renewable energy is a huge challenge. Batteries obviously can provide a solution to that intermittency challenge, but historically cost has been a real barrier. And then also batteries do also have a huge environmental impact when you think about the resources that are needed. And when we're talking about gigawatt scale data centers, that's a lot of batteries. So we decided to partner with Redwood Materials to figure out a way to sustainably power data centers. So we did this by deploying 20 megawatts of solar power. So that's that, bluish gray array that you see in the top left corner of the photo. And we combined that with 63 megawatt hours of end-of-life EV batteries provided by Redwood Materials. We believe that this is the world's largest installation of second life EV batteries. They are those little kind of like white blocks that look like Lego in the photo. Redwood Materials, in addition to providing the solar panels and the batteries, have also developed the software needed to orchestrate all of the different EV batteries and optimize their charging and discharging. And these and the solar and used EV batteries are powering a first of its kind off-grid modular data center. So these data centers are the two kind of shipping container-like buildings at the front of the screen. They are approximately 500 kilowatts each, and they integrate cooling, networking, and AI computing equipment inside those modules. And the result is the world's largest off-grid solar data center powered 24/7 by 100% renewable energy. So in terms of scalability, according to Redwood Materials, used EV batteries are going to be a really, really significant and growing energy source. More than 100,000 EVs are expected to come off the road in the US this year, and they're all going to come with used batteries. Today, over 5 million EVs are active on the road, and they represent approximately 350 gigawatt hours of energy. And they are going to reach the end of their life in the coming years. Another 150 gigawatt hour of EV batteries are entering the operational fleet each year. So as they reach the end of their life for the purposes of being an EV battery, they will also become available. And overall, Redwood believes that they can supply potentially upwards of 50% or more of the entire energy storage market here in the US. Currently, Redwood Materials has over a gigawatt hour of reusable batteries in their deployment pipeline, and that's expanding by another 5 gigawatt hours of batteries in the coming year. And they are already designing systems that are significantly larger than the scale that we're talking about here, which is approximately 2 megawatts of IT load. So this is the modular data center that Cruso launched, powered by EV batteries. We see a lot of potential for the scaling of modular data centers at the edge. Right now, we're hearing a lot of news about, massive hyperscale data centers for AI training. But as we shift from training to inference and more kind of AI applications that will require low latency, we believe that there is an opportunity to deploy these modular data centers at the edge and help rapidly scale AI compute. So the example that I shared was deployed in about 3 to 6 months, whereas a traditional data center oftentimes takes several years to construct. Let's see if this works. This is just a quick video of So we really believe that this could potentially be a new prototype for how we sustainably power AI data centers in the future. So thank you.
Thank you so much to all the presenters. Can we give everyone just one more round of applause? My brain is full. That was so much exciting brilliance that I think we are all really energized. There we go again, energized to build upon when we leave today. We had originally planned for some Q&A between each section, but in the interest of time, I think we're just going to leave that for the networking session that we're going to head to next. We also had one more presentation from our colleagues in Guangzhou, which we'll actually email out to you. It was a pre-recorded video, but a lot of really interesting things happening. So we'll send that over to you later.
Distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, in the context of the rapid global development of the new energy vehicle industry, China has emerged as the world's largest NEV market. As electric vehicles become more widely adopted, the efficient use and the retirement of power batteries have become increasingly prominent challenges. In collaboration with a wide range of partners, we have established a green closed-loop system covering the entire battery life cycle, comprising monitoring, extending warranty, cascade utilization, as well as repurposing and recycling. I'm honored to share our experience with you today. Power batteries are the core component of electric vehicles, so extending their lifespan is very important. Our approach is straightforward: proactive monitoring, early intervention, and professional maintenance. To this end, we have developed a real-time battery monitoring system based on CAN bus and OBD technology. By utilizing onboard sensors and a cloud platform, we track key parameters as voltage, temperature, charging and discharging behavior, SOC and SOH all with cell-level precision and a data collection frequency of 10 seconds. This enables early diagnosis and alerts for any abnormalities. When potential issues are identified, we perform timely maintenance, which may include replacing individual cells or other components. This approach helps prevent safety incident and extends the battery's operational lifespan. Currently, this method has increased the average used battery's lifespan by approximately 25% compared to the industry standard. Building on this capability, we had partnered with insurance companies, automakers, and other institutions to offer extended battery warranty service. This service provides a range of options, including safety and quality insurance, allowing users to choose according to their needs. We believe that as electric vehicles become more widely used, extended battery warranties will become a significant market. Once power batteries reach the end of their useful life, directly scrapping them wastes valuable resource and can lead to environmental pollution. Based on our experience, over half of retired batteries can be proposed for other use. In China, this process is known as cascade utilization. We have built a comprehensive technological system that covers sorting, grouping, integration, and application, enabling us to explore a variety of second life applications. After precise evaluation and intelligent sorting, the retired batteries are reassembled to batteries packets for new applications such as industrial and commercial energy storage, low-speed electric vehicles, backup power, and solar street light. For example, we have proposed retired lithium iron phosphate batteries for electric buses into a 250 kilowatt-hour energy storage unit for use at charging stations. This unit handles us to 500 kilowatt-hours in daily charging discharge cycles and has been operating smoothly for 2 years. We expect these batteries to last about 4 years in energy storage applications. Beyond energy storage, we also propose the batteries into products like starter batteries, RV power supplies, outdoor power packets, and golf cart batteries. This product has received positive feedback from the market, as known in the company slides. When these second life products reach the end of the life cycle, we recycle them in an environmentally friendly way, recovering valuable metals for the production of new batteries, thus reducing the needs for a raw material extraction. By managing the full battery life cycle, we extend the battery service life in vehicle. Through cascade utilization, we give the batteries a second life. This entire process significantly enhances battery resource efficiency and reduce carbon emission by about 30%. Humanity is entering a new era of technology revolution, where developments in electric vehicles, drones, human-drawn robots, AI, and other technologies will require significant power storage support. The importance of batteries will only continue to grow, making this a highly promising industry. We look forward to collaborating with partners worldwide to advance battery life cycle solutions. And of course, we warmly welcome you to visit Guangzhou, China for further exchange. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all. Truly, thank you all for being here today. I think, Ilka texted me after she got on her plane and said how exciting it was that despite her not being able to be here in person this Climate Week, just seeing so many people bring their energy, bring this excitement, bring their wisdom and knowledge to this work really reminds us that it doesn't matter about that elephant, right? Because we are going to move this work forward. We are going to build the energy system that we need. And so outside, oops, let me see, outside, we've got a couple of presenters from our academic network sharing some of the research that they have been working on. Come chat with them, see what they're up to, talk to each other, ask questions of the panelists that are here. Check out our report. That'll be on our website, newyorkclimateexchange.org. And while I still have this microphone, just one more extra special shout out to my colleagues, Rebecca, Ariel, Grayson, and particularly Wyatt Williams, just for all the work in getting us to this report, in getting us to this day, and just making all this energy happen. So hope you'll join me. And with that, thank you so much. And if you game, please join us at Volta Foundation's Battery Social in an hour.